At approximately 0610 hours on October 8, 1918, Corporal Alvin Cullum York of Company G, 328th Infantry Regiment, 82nd Division, United States Army, moved through the Argonne Forest in northeastern France. He was 30 years old. He carried a Model 1917 Enfield rifle chambered in 30-06 Springfield with 250 rounds of ammunition distributed across his cartridge belt and pockets. He also carried a Model 1911 .45 caliber automatic pistol with 3 7-round magazines. York was part of a 17-man patrol operating approximately 3 kilometers behind German lines. The patrol's mission was to silence German machine gun positions that were firing on American forces attempting to advance through the forest. The temperature was 8 degrees Celsius. Morning fog reduced visibility to approximately 50 meters. The terrain was heavily forested with thick undergrowth. Within the next 2 hours, York would kill between 17 and 28 German soldiers. The exact number remains disputed, but falls within this documented range. He would capture 132 German prisoners. He would force an entire German battalion to surrender. He would do this primarily alone after most of his patrol was killed or wounded in the opening moments of contact. The action that would earn him the Medal of Honor, the French Croix de Guerre, and recognition as one of the most decorated American soldiers of World War I would last approximately 45 minutes. This is what happened. Alvin Cullum York was born on December 13, 1887, in a 2-room log cabin in Pall Mall, Tennessee, a rural community in Fentress County in the Appalachian Mountains. He was the third of 11 children born to William Uriah York and Mary Elizabeth Brooks York. His father was a farmer and blacksmith. The family owned 75 acres of poor mountain farmland. York attended school sporadically, completing only 3rd grade. His formal education ended when he was 9 years old, as he was needed for farm work. He learned to hunt at an early age out of necessity. The family depended on wild game for food. By his teenage years, York was recognized in Fentress County as an exceptional marksman. He hunted with a muzzle-loading rifle until his early 20s, when he acquired a breech-loading rifle. York's marksmanship was developed through subsistence hunting in the Cumberland Mountains. Ammunition was expensive. Every shot had to count. He became proficient at shooting turkeys, considered one of the most difficult hunting challenges due to the bird's wariness and small vital area. A turkey's head is approximately 6 centimeters long and 4 centimeters wide. York could consistently hit a turkey's head at 40 yards. From approximately 1909 to 1914, York's behavior was, by his own later admission, problematic. He drank heavily, engaged in frequent fights at local establishments, and was involved in a violent confrontation in 1914 that resulted in serious injuries to another man. Court records from Fentress County document at least one assault case involving York during this period. On December 24, 1914, York attended a revival meeting at a Church of Christ in Christian Union in Pall Mall. He experienced a religious conversion that he later described as complete and immediate. He stopped drinking, stopped fighting, and became active in the church. The Church of Christ in Christian Union was a pacifist denomination. Its teaching held that killing another human being for any reason was a sin. York accepted this teaching. In June 1917, 1 month after Congress passed the Selective Service Act, York received his draft notice. He filed for conscientious objector status. On his draft registration card, in the space marked, "Do you claim exemption from draft?" York wrote yes and cited his religious beliefs. His application for conscientious objector status was denied. The Church of Christ in Christian Union was not recognized by the federal government as a legitimate pacifist denomination, unlike Quakers or Mennonites, whose members were granted exemptions. York was ordered to report for military service. He complied. He later stated that he considered fleeing to the mountains to avoid service, but decided that doing so would be cowardly. York reported for training at Camp Gordon, Georgia, on November 14, 1917. He was assigned to Company G, 328th Infantry Regiment, 82nd Division. His company commander was Captain Edward Courtney Bullock Danforth. His battalion commander was Major George Edward Buxton. Both officers learned of York's religious objections to killing. According to multiple accounts, including sworn statements made after the war, Danforth and Buxton engaged York in discussions about Christianity, military service, and the morality of defensive warfare. They quoted Bible passages to York, including, "Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's," and various Old Testament accounts of warfare. Buxton, a graduate of Harvard University, spent several hours with York discussing theology and military necessity. Whether these discussions actually resolved York's religious conflict, or whether York simply accepted that he would be required to fight, remains unclear from available documentation. York's own post-war accounts suggest he remained troubled, but concluded that fighting to defend freedom was morally acceptable. He never claimed his doubts were fully resolved. York completed training and shipped to France with the 82nd Division in May 1918. He arrived at the port of Brest on May 16, 1918. The 82nd Division moved to the front lines in Alsace in June 1918. York participated in his first combat action near Château-Thierry in July 1918. He was promoted to corporal in August 1918. By October 1918, York had been in France for 5 months and in combat for 3 months. His marksmanship had been noted by his officers. He had been assigned as one of the lead riflemen in his platoon. He had not yet been wounded. He had not yet killed anyone, as far as unit records indicate. The Meuse-Argonne Offensive began on September 26, 1918. It was the largest operation undertaken by the American Expeditionary Forces in World War I. The offensive involved 1.2 million American soldiers. The objective was to break through German defensive lines in the Argonne Forest region and advance toward the Sedan-Mézières Railroad, a critical supply line for German forces on the Western Front. The German defenses in the Argonne Forest were extensive. They had occupied the region since 1914, 4 years earlier. They had constructed 3 major defensive lines, each consisting of trenches, bunkers, barbed wire obstacles, and artillery positions. The forest itself was dense, with limited roads and poor visibility. Terrain favored the defender. By October 8, 1918, the offensive had been underway for 12 days. American casualties exceeded 75,000 killed and wounded. Advances were measured in hundreds of meters per day, rather than kilometers. German machine gun positions, positioned on high ground and concealed in the forest, were inflicting severe casualties on advancing American infantry. The 82nd Division entered the line on October 7, 1918. The division was ordered to advance north through the Argonne Forest toward the Decauville Railroad. The 328th Infantry Regiment was assigned to capture the village of Châtel-Chéhéry and the high ground beyond it. The terrain between American lines and Châtel-Chéhéry consisted of steep, forested hills cut by narrow ravines. German forces held the high ground. American intelligence estimated that German strength in the sector included elements of at least 2 divisions, with extensive machine gun emplacements covering all approach routes. On the morning of October 8, 1918, the 328th Infantry Regiment prepared to attack. Company G, York's unit, was assigned to the second wave of the assault. At 0600 hours, the first wave moved forward. Within 20 minutes, the attack stalled. German machine gun fire from positions on Hill 223, a ridgeline approximately 500 meters north of the American starting position, was stopping the advance. At approximately 6:10 hours, Sergeant Bernard Early, a squad leader in Company G, was ordered to take a patrol behind German lines to neutralize the machine gun positions. Early selected 16 men from his platoon. The patrol numbered 17 soldiers total, including Early. The patrol included Sergeant Bernard Early as patrol leader, Corporal Alvin C. York, Corporal Murray Savage, Private William Wine, Private Patrick Donahue, Private George Wills, Private Ralph Weiler, Private Fred Waring, Private Carl Swanson, Private Michael Saxena, Private Marion Demowski, Private Mario Muzzi, Private Fyodor Sok, Private Joseph Konatsky, Private Thomas Johnson, Private Early Cutting, and Private Percy Beardsley. The patrol moved north through the forest, advancing parallel to the front line but approximately 500 meters to the west, in a flanking maneuver designed to approach the German positions from the side or rear. Movement was slow due to the terrain and the need for stealth. At approximately 0730 hours, after advancing approximately 2 kilometers, the patrol encountered 2 German soldiers on a trail. The Germans were not in combat positions. They appeared to be messengers or soldiers returning from the rear areas. The patrol captured both without firing a shot. The prisoners indicated through gestures, neither spoke English, that a German headquarters or command post was located nearby. Early decided to continue forward to investigate. The patrol, now numbering 17 Americans and 2 German prisoners, moved down a slope toward a clearing near a small stream. At approximately 8:10 hours, the patrol entered a clearing at the base of a hill. The clearing was approximately 50 meters wide and 80 meters long, bordered by the stream on one side and dense forest on the other 3 sides. In the clearing, the patrol encountered approximately 20 German soldiers. The Germans were not in combat positions. Some were eating, some were cleaning equipment. They appeared to be support personnel for nearby machine gun positions. Sergeant Early ordered the patrol to surround and capture the Germans. The 17 Americans moved into the clearing with weapons raised. The Germans, outnumbered and surprised, raised their hands. No shots were fired. What happened next occurred in seconds. German machine gun positions, located on the hillside approximately 40 meters above the clearing and concealed in the forest, opened fire on the Americans in the clearing. The machine guns had not fired earlier because the Americans had approached through dead ground, terrain that was not visible from the machine gun positions. But once the Americans entered the clearing, they were fully exposed. Multiple accounts, including after-action reports and sworn testimony from survivors, state that at least 3 German machine guns opened fire simultaneously. The weapons were MG-08 Maxim machine guns, the standard German machine gun of World War I. The MG-08 was a water-cooled, belt-fed weapon firing 7.92 57mm Mauser rounds at a rate of approximately 400 rounds per minute. The guns were positioned in a rough arc on the hillside, creating a crossfire over the clearing. The initial burst of fire lasted approximately 10 seconds. When it stopped, 9 American soldiers were dead or wounded. Sergeant Early, the patrol leader, was shot through the buttocks and hip and was unable to move. Corporal Murray Savage was hit in the chest and died within minutes. 6 other soldiers were hit with varying severity. Of the 17-man patrol, 6 soldiers were killed in the initial burst. 3 were mortally wounded and would die within the next hour. 3 were wounded, but mobile. 5 were unwounded. The unwounded and lightly wounded soldiers took cover behind trees at the edge of the clearing. Corporal Alvin York was among the unwounded. He had been positioned at the rear of the patrol when the machine guns opened fire, which placed him at the edge of the clearing rather than in its center where most of the casualties occurred. York's position at 0812 hours, 2 minutes after the initial burst of machine gun fire, was behind a large tree at the southeastern edge of the clearing, approximately 8 meters from where Sergeant Early lay wounded. Between York and the German machine gun positions was 40 meters of open ground sloping upward. The German machine guns were firing sporadically, pinning the surviving Americans behind cover. The Germans had tactical advantage. They held high ground. They had protected positions. They had automatic weapons. The Americans were in a depression with no cover and limited visibility of the German positions. York assessed the situation. He later stated in sworn testimony that he could see the German machine guns firing, but that the guns were positioned so that their fields of fire covered the center of the clearing and the western edge, where most of the surviving Americans had taken cover. York's position at the southeastern edge placed him in dead ground. Relative to the machine gun positions, the Germans could not depress their weapons low enough to engage targets at such a sharp downward angle so close to their positions. York had approximately 200 rounds of .30-06 ammunition for his rifle, distributed in cloth bandoliers and his cartridge belt. He had his Model 1911 pistol with 21 rounds. He had no grenades. The patrol had not been issued grenades for this mission. At approximately 08:15 hours, York began engaging German soldiers on the hillside with his rifle. His first targets were not the machine gun crews, who were protected by shields and earthworks, but German soldiers who were moving between positions or exposing themselves to fire at the Americans in the clearing. German accounts captured after the war, including testimony from prisoners and documents found at the site, indicate that a German officer on the hillside initially believed the Americans in the clearing were all casualties. The sporadic rifle fire from York's position was unexpected. The Germans could not locate York's position with precision due to the angle and the forest cover. York fired methodically. His training as a subsistence hunter had taught him patience and fire discipline. Ammunition was too valuable to waste. According to York's sworn statement made on October 9, 1918, one day after the action, he took a prone position and selected targets carefully, prioritizing Germans who presented clear shots. York stated, "I had to stop them before they got to me, so I just shot carefully. I didn't make no mistakes. Every time I pulled the trigger, a German fell." Multiple witnesses, including Privates Cutting, Wills, Wine, and Weiler, who survived the action, stated that York fired approximately 15 to 20 rounds in the first 5 minutes. His shooting was precise. Germans who exposed themselves fell. The effect was to suppress German movement on the hillside. At approximately 08:20 hours, a German officer, later identified from documents as First Lieutenant Paul Vollmer, commander of a machine gun company, organized an assault to dislodge York. Vollmer ordered a squad of German soldiers, estimated between 6 and 8 men, to fix bayonets and assault York's position. This decision was tactically logical. The Germans could not effectively engage York with machine gun fire due to the angle. A bayonet assault down the slope would close the distance rapidly and eliminate the threat. York saw the Germans coming. He later stated he counted 6 men. They were moving down the slope at a run. Distance from their starting position to York's location was approximately 40 meters. A running soldier covers 40 meters in approximately 7 to 10 seconds. York made a tactical decision. He switched from the rifle, which required working a bolt action between shots, to his .45 caliber pistol, which was semi-automatic and allowed rapid fire. York had learned to shoot handguns as a teenager. In rural Tennessee, handgun shooting was a common skill. A popular shooting technique, which York had practiced, was to shoot running targets, typically thrown cans or rolling objects. The technique required leading the target to account for its motion. York also employed a specific technique that he had used when hunting turkeys. When multiple turkeys were present, shooting the lead bird would cause the others to flee. But shooting the rear bird often caused the flock to hesitate, allowing multiple shots. York later stated he consciously applied this technique to the charging Germans. York shot the last man in the German line first. The German fell. York shot the next man in line. That man fell. York continued firing from rear to front. The effect was that the lead Germans continued advancing briefly, unaware that the men behind them were falling. This gave York additional seconds to fire. York's pistol held 7 rounds. He fired all 7 rounds. According to his statement, 6 Germans fell. 1 round missed. The entire sequence lasted approximately 8 seconds. The assault had failed. 6 German soldiers lay dead or wounded on the slope between the machine gun positions and York's location. At approximately 08:25 hours, Lieutenant Vollmer made a decision. He later stated in prisoner interrogation that he believed his company was being attacked by a much larger American force. The accurate rifle fire, the failure of the bayonet assault, and reports from his soldiers of Americans in the clearing below convinced him that his position was being overrun. Vollmer ordered his soldiers to cease fire. He stood up and called out in English, "English, no shoot, no shoot." York held his fire. He called back, "Come down here." Vollmer and several German soldiers emerged from their positions and began walking down the slope toward York with hands raised. Other Germans, seeing their officer surrendering, followed. York maintained his position behind the tree with his rifle aimed at the approaching Germans. He had reloaded his pistol. According to the statements of Private Wills and Private Cutting, York ordered the Germans in English to line up. The Germans complied. The surrendering Germans numbered approximately 90 soldiers, according to the count made later. They included the machine gun crews and support personnel. Among them was a German major who commanded the battalion in that sector, Major Gustav Vollmer, who was Lieutenant Paul Vollmer's superior officer. The shared surname was coincidental. They were not related. At this point, approximately 08:35 hours, Sergeant Early, despite his wounds, reasserted command. He was lying in the clearing, unable to walk, but conscious. He ordered York to take charge of the prisoners and move them back to American lines. York gathered the German prisoners. He ordered them to carry the wounded Americans, including Sergeant Early. York positioned himself at the rear of the column with his rifle. The other able-bodied Americans from the patrol, now numbering approximately 6 soldiers, guarded the prisoners. The column began moving south through the forest toward American lines. Distance to friendly positions was approximately 2 kilometers. As the column moved through the forest, it encountered additional German positions. At each position, York used the same tactic. He called out for surrender, using captured German officers to translate or relay the demand. When Germans saw their own officers and 90-plus prisoners under guard, resistance collapsed. At one position, York encountered a German machine gun nest that initially refused to surrender. York later stated he called forward the German major and ordered him to command the machine gun crew to surrender. The major complied. The machine gun crew surrendered. By the time the column reached American lines at approximately 09:30 hours, York had accumulated 132 German prisoners. The exact count was made by American military police at the regimental collection point. The prisoners included 1 major, 2 lieutenants, and 129 enlisted personnel. York reported to his company commander, Captain Danforth. Danforth later stated, "When I saw York and the prisoners, I didn't believe it. I asked him how many prisoners he had. He said he didn't know. We counted them. There were 132. Brigadier General Julian Robert Lindsay, commander of the 164th Infantry Brigade, which included the 328th Infantry Regiment, personally interviewed York later that day. Lindsay questioned how one soldier could have captured so many Germans. York provided his account. Lindsay ordered a detailed investigation. American officers returned to the site of the action. They counted German bodies. The count documented between 17 and 28 dead Germans in the immediate area of the action. The variance in the count reflects the difficulty of determining which casualties were caused by York versus other. American fire and the possibility that some wounded Germans were evacuated before American forces secured the site. Physical evidence at the site included 6 German bodies on the slope between the machine gun positions and York's tree, corresponding to the bayonet assault. Multiple German bodies near the machine gun positions, spent American rifle cartridges near the tree where York had positioned himself, spent American pistol cartridges in the same location, and evidence of machine gun firing positions on the hillside. Sworn statements were collected from survivors of the patrol: Private Early Cutting, Private Patrick Donahue, Private George Wills, Private William Wine, Private Ralph Weiler, and Sergeant Bernard Early despite his wounds. All statements corroborated York's account. Sergeant Early, the patrol leader, stated, "York did the shooting. We were all down. He was the only one who had a clear shot. He killed more Germans than I ever saw one man kill." German prisoners were interrogated. Lieutenant Paul Vollmer provided a detailed statement. He confirmed that one American soldier's accurate rifle fire had caused multiple casualties, that a bayonet assault had failed with all attackers killed, and that he had surrendered because he believed he was being overwhelmed by superior American forces. Major Gustav Vollmer stated, The Americans who shot at us was impossible to resist. He could not be seen, and his fire was too accurate. American casualties from the patrol were severe. Of the 17-man patrol, Corporal Murray Savage, 24 years old, from Livingston, Tennessee, was killed in action. Private William Wine, 22 years old, from Rockaway Beach, New York, was killed in action. Private Patrick Donahue, 23 years old, from South Norwalk, Connecticut, died of wounds October 9th. Private Marion Demowski, 26 years old, from Buffalo, New York, was killed in action. Private Ralph Weiler, 21 years old, from Brooklyn, New York, was mortally wounded and died October 8th. Private Carl Swanson, 25 years old, from Worcester, Massachusetts, was killed in action. 6 soldiers were killed in the initial burst of machine gun fire or died of wounds within 24 hours. An additional 3 soldiers, including Sergeant Early, were wounded but survived. The capture of 132 prisoners and the elimination of the machine gun positions allowed Company G and the rest of the 328th Infantry Regiment to advance. The regiment captured Châtel-Chiéry later that day. American casualties for the day's action were significantly lower than projected because the German defensive positions had been neutralized. German documents captured after the war indicated that the loss of the machine gun company and the battalion commander caused significant disruption to German defenses in that sector. The penetration of American forces on October 8th contributed to a larger German withdrawal beginning October 10th. York was promoted to sergeant on October 29, 1918. The promotion was effective October 8th, the date of the action, but was not officially processed until 3 weeks later. York continued serving with the 328th Infantry Regiment through the end of the war. The armistice was signed on November 11, 1918, 34 days after York's action. York did not participate in further combat. The recommendation for the Medal of Honor was submitted by Captain Danforth on October 10, 1918. The recommendation was supported by sworn statements from 6 survivors of the patrol, testimony from German prisoners, and physical evidence from the battlefield. The recommendation was approved by Brigade Commander Brigadier General Lindsay, Division Commander Major General George Bell, Jr., and Corps Commander Lieutenant General Hunter Liggett. General John J. Pershing, commander of the American Expeditionary Forces, personally reviewed the recommendation and approved it on November 19, 1918. York was also recommended for the French Croix de Guerre and the Italian Croce al Merito di Guerra. Both decorations were approved. General Pershing presented York with the Medal of Honor at a ceremony at the headquarters of the American Expeditionary Forces in Chaumont, France, on April 18, 1919. York was one of 9 soldiers decorated that day. Also present was Marshal Ferdinand Foch, Supreme Commander of Allied Forces. York returned to the United States in May 1919. He arrived at the port of Hoboken, New Jersey on May 22, 1919. He was met by journalists and a crowd estimated at several thousand people. York's action had been publicized extensively in American newspapers during the spring of 1919. On May 23, 1919, York traveled to Washington, D.C., where he met with Secretary of War Newton Baker and President Woodrow Wilson. He participated in a parade on Pennsylvania Avenue. Crowds were estimated at 250,000 people. York was invited to New York City, where he was honored with a ticker tape parade down Broadway on May 24, 1919. He was offered multiple commercial endorsements, including offers to appear in films, advertisements, and touring shows. Total value of offers exceeded $250,000, equivalent to approximately $4.5 million in $20 and $25. York declined all commercial offers. He stated he would not profit from his military service. He returned to Pall Mall, Tennessee, in June 1919. York married Gracie Williams on June 7, 1919 in Pall Mall. He had been engaged to Williams before the war. They would have 8 children. York faced significant difficulties adjusting to civilian life. His farm in Tennessee was poor quality land. He had no significant income. His fame had not translated into financial security because he had refused commercial opportunities. The state of Tennessee and private donors established a fund to purchase 385 acres of better farmland for York and to construct a house for his family. The farm was presented to York in 1922. York and his family moved to the property, located near Pall Mall, where he farmed for the remainder of his life. York remained involved in his community. He established the Alvin C. York Agricultural Institute, a school for rural children in Fentress County, in 1926. The school provided vocational and agricultural education. York raised funds for the school and served on its board until his death. York was approached multiple times by Hollywood studios about making a film of his life. He declined until 1940, when he agreed to a film by Warner Brothers. His motivation, he stated, was to raise funds for the York Agricultural Institute. The film, titled Sergeant York, was released in 1941. Gary Cooper portrayed York. The film was a commercial and critical success, earning Academy Award nominations for Best Picture and Best Actor. Cooper won the Academy Award for Best Actor. York received approximately $50,000 from the film rights, which he used to pay debts on his farm and support the school. York attempted to enlist in the Army after the United States entered World War II in December 1941. He was 54 years old. His application was rejected due to age and health concerns. York was significantly overweight and suffered from chronic back pain. York was commissioned as a major in the Army Signal Corps and assigned to morale and training duties in the United States. He never deployed overseas during World War II. He was discharged in 1945. York suffered a stroke in 1954 that left him partially paralyzed. He required a wheelchair for the remainder of his life. Medical expenses exhausted his savings. The Internal Revenue Service filed a lien against York's property in 1961 for unpaid back taxes on income from the 1941 film. The amount claimed was $85,000, including penalties and interest. Public awareness of York's financial difficulties led to a fundraising campaign. Speaker of the House Sam Rayburn established a fund. Donations from across the United States paid York's tax debt and provided additional funds for his medical care. York died on September 2, 1964, at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Nashville, Tennessee. He was 76 years old. The cause of death was a cerebral hemorrhage. He was buried with full military honors at the Wolf River Cemetery in Pall Mall, Tennessee. His funeral was attended by Tennessee Governor Frank Clement, Major General Matthew Ridgway, and approximately 8,000 other mourners. An honor guard from the 82nd Airborne Division, the successor unit to his World War I division, participated in the service. York's Medal of Honor is displayed at the Tennessee State Museum in Nashville. His rifle and pistol from October 8, 1918, a Model 1917 Enfield, and a Model 1911 .45 pistol are displayed at the same museum. The Alvin C. York Agricultural Institute in Jamestown, Tennessee, continues to operate. It is now a public high school serving Fentress County. York's farm in Pall Mall is preserved as the Alvin C. York State Historic Park, operated by the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. The site includes York's farmhouse, the original family cabin, and a grist mill. The Wolf River Cemetery, where York is buried, is maintained by the state of Tennessee. York's grave receives approximately 10,000 visitors per year. Highway 127 in Tennessee, which runs through Pall Mall, is designated the Alvin C. York Memorial Highway. York has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and historical studies. The 1941 film Sergeant York is considered one of the most accurate biographical films of its era, though it contains dramatizations and omissions. York's Medal of Honor citation reads, "After his platoon had suffered heavy casualties and 3 other non-commissioned officers had become casualties, CPL York assumed command. Fearlessly leading 7 men, he charged with great daring a machine gun nest which was pouring deadly and incessant fire upon his platoon. In this heroic feat, the machine gun nest was taken, together with 4 officers and 128 men and several guns. The citation understates the action. The reference to leading 7 men reflects the confusion in the immediate aftermath about how many Americans participated. Subsequent investigation clarified that York's action was primarily individual. York's action on October 8, 1918, exemplifies the Medal of Honor standard: conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. Of the approximately 3,500 medals of honor awarded since 1861, York's action remains one of the most thoroughly documented and verified. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to this channel. We are committed to telling the documented stories of Medal of Honor recipients, more than 3,500 stories spanning more than 150 years of American military history. Each story deserves to be told with precision and respect. Each recipient deserves to be remembered. Leave a comment below. Share where you're watching from. If you have a connection to the 82nd Airborne Division, or to Fentress County, Tennessee, or to World War I history, share it with us. Many of you are veterans. Some of you are active duty. Some are family members of those who served. Some are simply Americans and citizens of the world who want to understand what these individuals did and why their actions matter. In the clearing in the Argonne Forest on October 8, 1918, 6 American soldiers died. Their names were Savage, Wine, Donahue, Domowski, Weiler, and Swanson. They were between 21 and 26 years old. They left behind families who mourned them. The action that earned Alvin York the Medal of Honor began because those men were killed, and because York, from behind a tree in dead ground, made a decision to engage an enemy force that had every tactical advantage. The facts speak for themselves. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering.